All right, $1 Million Picks Championship Round Edition. Peter Schrager is here from Good Morning Football and Fox coverage, and more importantly, the good luck charm of $1 Million Picks. I don't know. This goes in the first sentence of your legacy now. You've come on 3 straight weeks. All we've done is win. Last week we won $1.585 million. We're up now $1.5 million for the season. In the playoffs, we are 5-0 on our big playoff bets. We're 7-3 against the spread, but all 3 teams that lost all won the game. So we had the team, they just didn't cover. We are up $2.812 million over the last 3 weeks.
That's unbelievable.
Not bad.
It's great. And do you get the feeling that people who listen to this podcast root with you or against you? Because I get so many texts from people who listen and they're like, you guys are hitting all your bets and F you guys. And I'm like, I don't make any money off this thing. But do you get the feeling that the listeners to this podcast root for Bill Simmons or root against him on $1 Million Picks?
Well, what we don't want is we don't want the mushes to join us this week. So they can stay away. If you're losing, don't stay in the way. I really liked round 1 and I really liked round 2. I think round 3 is really, really hard. And I'm not even sure. I want to finish the year positive. We might go a little conservative this week. And before we talk about these games, let's go backwards.
Yeah.
Biggest surprise for you in round 2. I've had 5 days to think about this. I think my biggest surprise was how close the Browns were to winning that game with or without Mahomes. The fact that we had that Higgins touchdown overturned. Just in general, they were really in that game and they were able to move the ball up and down the field and do some things. And I don't know how to translate that moving forward this week to the Bills, how the Chiefs looked last week.
I'd be patient with it because I felt the same way and it felt like they were going to lose that game at the end. But then you think back into the first half, the Chiefs are up 19-3. Butker missed 2 field goals, and Mahomes was hobbled. Like that 3rd and 1 option play, it's almost like they were tempting karma, knowing why are you running the ball? So they were cruising there for a while. And if Butker makes those field goals, maybe it's not a game. And then if Mahomes stays in, but they had their shot at the end. And I know you and cousin Sal had a big debate on it. We did it on our show, me and Burleson, about that rule. And everyone says, change that rule, the touchback rule. Like it's the one rule everyone universally hates. I say, absolutely not. The entire league is just rewarding offense. They know that rule. Like everyone knows that rule. And I can tell you, Belichick coaches it, McVay coaches it, that if you even try to extend, if anything less than a 2-point conversion or 4th down, you even try to extend on that thing, you get penalized internally. Like they don't want. So for Higgins to do that, it either tells me, A, he got too excited and he went for it. B, they don't coach it as hard. Or C, it's a failure from both sides. Like to me, that's it. You know the rule. It's the rule, and you've got to just use every bit of resistance not to outstretch that ball because time and time again, it has burned teams.
In the Twitter era, people just love getting mad about stuff and yelling that things should be changed and not offering any alternatives. It's like, change the rule, change the rule. Yeah. Change it to what?
To what?
Is he supposed to get the ball back at the 1 yard line because he fumbled it out of bounds and in the end zone? There's no alternative. It has to be a touchback for the other team. It's so stupid. Why are we arguing about this?
And then I made the case. I said, I did this whole thing, and then I got a text from a head coach who's a defensive head coach, and he goes, well, why don't we just give the ball back to the offense every time there's an interception? Or every time there's a fumble recovery, just hand it back to the offense. Like,
right.
Every time we do this, it's like, let's get the more points and score. It's like literally the only rule that can benefit defense. And I mean, you could say Sorensen's hit was dirty. That's fine. But, it was a hell of a hit. He fumbled it. And that's what happens. That's the sport. It's been the rule forever. And you need to know the rules. So, to me, that was my thing. My big surprise, though.
Oh, by the way, how about this? Don't fumble the ball in the end zone.
Don't do it. Hold on.
Yeah. The rule is if you fumble it out of the end zone, the other team gets the ball. So, maybe don't do that. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My big surprise was the nightcap on Sunday. And I hate to be so negative, but I came on this podcast, and last week I was like, I just don't know if the Saints have enough offensive firepower. It's tough to do it because everyone wanted to do the sentimental goodbye to Drew Brees. They had no shot. The Saints could not win with that quarterback in the second half, and that was my surprise, just how quickly he fell off a cliff. And if we're talking Bucs Packers in a little bit, don't forget how bad Drew Brees was and how close that game was. And if Drew Brees makes 1 or 2 plays in the fourth quarter, that game goes differently. Drew Brees, I don't think he necessarily wants to put that game in his Hall of Fame reel.
By that same token, Don't forget how close the Saints were. They're going over midfield when Cook gets stripped.
You're right.
And that's one of the reasons I have so much trouble with that game. If Cook just holds on to the ball there, it's probably 23-13. You would think.
And 3rd and 11 on their own 20. Brady, in a 2020 game with 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter, throws a laser back shoulder to Tyler Johnson, who's got 12 catches on the year, and he makes maybe the all-time greatest catch in Buccaneers history. And it completes it. Like, those things happen in a game. I'm not holding it against the Buccaneers. If anything, it was great. But it's easy to see that final score, and it's easy to come away from that game and be like, wow, the Buccaneers are red hot and they're rolling. I actually felt Fournette ran the wrong way on that one running play. I felt like there was mistakes on special teams if Deontay Harris doesn't get injured. Drew Brees and that arm is what really kept that team from finding their way into the NFC Championship game.
Cook being sloppy, Taysom Hill not being there,
Yep.
Harris getting hurt early, Brees hit the wall and you could see it. And just the way he carried himself the last few weeks clearly wasn't right. And then we find out after the game that Michael Thomas needs surgery on 17 different parts of his body.
Yep.
So I thought the Michael Thomas thing was like the guy's a malcontent. This is the kind of stuff that happens when somebody's playing themselves at it. And then you find out like, oh, he just wanted to be there for Drew Brees. And not only have one injury, he had 3.
Yeah.
So then you go back and you think about it and you go, wow. So they had a completely compromised Michael Thomas. They had a quarterback who couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards. They had Traquan Smith basically as their best playmaker other than Kamara. They had no special teams ace.
No Taysom.
And yet had a chance to go up 10, midway through the second half. So that's the hardest thing to figure out with this Bucs team. I didn't love how they played in either game, but I also think they were flying on the ball.
Oh,
they have so many different game breakers. And when you just stack up the game breakers compared to the Packers, they have better players. I don't know if that means they're going to win, but they definitely have more blue chippers.
I think the breakout player of the weekend was Devin White in a way that I don't remember a player making a national, hello to everybody. So he didn't play in the wild card round because of the COVID stuff, but number 45 on the Buccaneers, for 2 years, they have been telling me that this guy is the best linebacker in football. They're taking him 4th overall. The GM, Jason Light, and I are friendly. He's calling me after. He's like, when was the last time you saw a middle linebacker taken 4th overall? This guy's that good. Like, they're so excited. And then he kind of was like, they made moments in his rookie year. He had injuries with his knee. And then this year was really good, but in those primetime games didn't have the game. Devin White went from being like a fun player for us on Twitter to talk about and for like the football fans to now being a national name and is a wrecking ball, the kind of guy that I think is going to be the biggest X factor if they win or lose on Sunday.
I researched that Packers-Bucs game a lot because
I rewatched it this week.
Oh, did you? I was going to ask you about it because the Bucs killed the Packers, but then you go back, you look at it. Packers are up 10-0, pick 6. Another pick where the Bucs get the ball in the 2. Now it's 14-10, and the game kind of unravels. And one of the things that it's super nerdy, I read one super nerdy football piece about it. I think it was on ESPN, and they were saying how the Packers were trying to run side to side with Jones and with Dillon, and the Bucs linebackers, David and White, were just so fast they couldn't do it. And the smart guy was thinking in this game they're going to be pounding through the tackles, kind of like what the Rams did with Akers. And I thought Akers was able to run the ball last week. I mean, he certainly wasn't the reason why they lost. So what else did you notice on the tape?
So there's a couple of really bad missed blocks by the running back. So Jamal Williams, number 30, completely whiffs on Levante David on one time, and that gets to Rodgers. Rodgers was under pressure the entire game. You're right. They're up 10-0. Rodgers does a whole celebration, and everyone's like, oh, my God, Rodgers, he's doing the shimmy with his hips, and everyone's, oh, they're going to blow him out. The Bucs defense was relentless, and Todd Bowles just continued to send everybody, and they really overpowered the Packers offensive line, but also their running backs into a way that I think you're going to see a lot of different chips and different formations to try to protect Rodgers. Because when he has time, of course, but they were sending 7. I mean, they were sending Sean Murphy Bunting came out on the outside at one time and got to Rodgers, and he totally missed it. Rewatching the game, he had Devontae Adams on a lot of deep passes. He didn't have the time to get it to him. So this game may be won or lost on whether Devin White and JPP and those guys are breathing down his neck in 2 seconds or if they can't get to him in 3.
What about the left tackle who went out a couple weeks ago?
David Bakhtiari.
Do you feel okay about the O-line without the left tackle or no?
So the guy who replaced him is a guy named Billy Turner, and this now we're talking offensive line talk. Billy Turner has been in the league for a long time. Got to Green Bay, great dude, like big personality, and like one of these really smart guys. He's from the city of Minneapolis. Came over to the Packers, and originally he was playing guard, then he was playing right tackle, and now they're using him at left tackle. And Bakhtiari is $100 million guy. I have not seen a huge drop off with Turner. I really haven't. And it hasn't really shown up on film, and it hasn't shown up with anyone talking to me about this team that, wait a second, they're without Bakhtiari. They have not missed him in a way that I think a lot of people expected they would.
Well, we might as well just keep talking about this game.
Let's do it.
Packers are favored by 3. The line seems like it's inching toward 3.5, but it's not quite there yet. The money line is basically minus 120, minus 125, depending where you look. They're the number 2 in weighted total DVOA, 11 turnovers all season. I looked at their wins because the Packer fan, a lot of fans think I just don't like their team. I like whoever is going to win me money. I could care less who I'm betting on.
You and me too. I picked the Rams on national TV last week, and let's just say, it didn't go over too smoothly with some folks in Green Bay, but that's how it goes.
I think you thought you were getting a little more from Aaron Donald in that game, though.
Yeah,
right.
I underestimated his impact, I think, with that broken rib.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at the Packers schedule. So their last 9 wins: Houston, Jacksonville, Trubisky twice, Doug Peterson in Philly, Detroit, and whoever their coach was at the time. So 2 teams that fired their coach right after, and Houston fired their coach, and Jacksonville fired their coach, plus Trubisky twice. That's 6 wins. Carolina, game was like pretty close. Tennessee, they beat legit.
That was a good game, a night game in the snow. Yeah.
Now Tennessee has a terrible defense, and they exploited it. And then the Rams in the playoffs, a game that, was a 7-point game. And Goff was kind of doing the stuff I think McVay wanted him to do. Goff certainly didn't kill them in that game.
Goff exceeded expectations tenfold in that game. I think he played as well as you could imagine any quarterback with 9 fingers to play.
Right. And that no cup, all that stuff. Their 3 losses over that time. They got murdered by Tampa. They lost to Minnesota in a game where Cook just beat them by himself. And then this is the game that I think could be the doppelganger game if you're going against Green Bay, is they lose to Indy in OT.
Yep.
By 3. And Indy is kind of that it's kind of a poor man's version of, I think, what Tampa can do if Tampa plays well, which is make some plays on D, but more importantly, the run pass combo, what we saw from playoff Lenny last week. Some people like Warren Sharp thinks Tampa is still too run heavy. But fundamentally, if Tampa plays well, that's the kind of game it'll be, like the 31-28, 31-24 type game. My point is, Green Bay is a 1 seed, and I think sometimes in our heads we overrate, like, oh, they're the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And there were 3 teams that could have been the 1 seed until the last 2 weeks, right? And I think they probably had the easiest schedule out of the 3. I don't feel like they're a traditional kick-ass, awesome 1 seed. I'm just looking at it from a Tampa standpoint. The fact that they went to New Orleans and they won the game and they came from behind, I think that means something. I don't love the Tampa team. I think they're super sloppy.
Yep.
But I wouldn't want to play him in a playoff game, especially with the Brady piece of it and the aura that he brings to these games. I would be scared if I was a Packers fan in this game, is my point.
Couple things. First of all, you're spot on about the Packers, and they had the easiest strength of schedule in the entire league this year. Easiest. When it was all said and done, the records against their opponents was easiest, which is something to be said. But they can only drive the car, the keys that they're given. I'm not going to hold it against them. The thing with Tampa, and I've been saying this to you all these weeks, and it started the bye week. It came on after they lost to the Chiefs, and then when they came out and just absolutely annihilated the Lions, and they wanted to put up 80 on the Lions to make a statement on a random NFL Network Saturday game against no coach and 7 different assistants who had never picked up a clipboard, is that they've got this young team, and there's like this really confident swagger, and then you match that with the Brady factor. So their defensive backfield, which is a bunch of guys who you might not have heard of before this year, and Sean Murphy Bunting and Jamel Dean and the Carlton Davis, they call themselves the Grave Diggers. And they're like this like wild bunch of all young guys under the age of 25. And they are not scared of anyone or anything. And they tweet a lot and they Instagram a lot. And they've got like, it almost like reminds me of, I don't know, like the Bad Boys Pistons or something, where it's like they don't know anybody. Like they're going to play this game, and you're going to have to deal with it. And they take a lot of risks. They get beat, as you saw the Traquan Smith play. Like they were all over the place, and they got caught up in coverage. They do get beat, but they're aggressive. They hit, and I can tell you, there's not going to be a fear factor of Aaron Rodgers, which I think is a huge deal. A lot of guys go into Lambeau, young player. Oh my gosh, I'm covering Devontae Adams. These guys, they don't know any better. They think. And maybe they think they're up to the task to stop Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. And I know that.
I think it's beyond a lack of a fear factor. I think they're going to like be relishing this. Like, let's go get this guy. We beat this guy in October. Let's go beat him again. I'm with you. Like they have playmakers all over the place, which I think you need.
And they fly. Like Devin White runs like a 4.4 40. And then on the other side is David. And neither of these guys get any respect because for the last decade, Tampa Bay is on the 7th Fox game, or Tampa Bay is on the 8th CBS game, and they're playing at 1:00, and they're playing against the Jaguars, and no one's watching. And Levante David for 8 years has been maybe the best linebacker at his position. But you would never say that other than looking at the stats and saying, well, PFF says this, or they have a lot of tackles. This is finally their moment for so many of these guys that have been there. And they're all kind of blossoming and flourishing together on defense. It's a cool deal. And then they've got these guys up front who are just like, so we didn't mention his name yet, but let's first say Sue, who has history with Rodgers, and you know that Rodgers does not like Sue. And Rodgers and Sue have had battles, but like even this past year, they had a little something in that game. I watched it back. Sue's not a fan of Rodgers by any means. There's no love lost there. JPP, who has beaten Aaron Rodgers in a playoff game in Lambeau, he's done that. But the X factor might be that big son of a gun in the middle who has not played at all in the last 2 months, who might be dressing, and that's Vita Vea.
No, he's playing. They were saying today. Yeah, it's happening. This is a major thing. That guy's really good.
All right. So he might come in, like literally, Bill, I don't know. He might come in 40 pounds over his playing weight. I have no idea. He's one of these huge guys, but he might be the best run-stuffing defensive tackle in all of sports. And like you just plot him in the middle. If you get 20 to 30 plays, his injury, if he plays through it, and he will, all expectations are because he's been practicing, it's a total game changer because now you can't just do the Aaron Jones up the middle. You can't just do the A.J. Dillon and expect him to do it. Like Vita Vea will eat you alive. He's that big and he's that dominant a run stopper up front. And I think it's a huge X factor that might be on the injury report. A lot of people aren't talking about.
Well, so we just listed two things that might be in Tampa's favor. One is they actually might be able to stop the run because their linebackers are fast enough. They can stuff the middle. We already know they can get pressure on Rodgers because they did it. We saw them last week. I know Breeze, that was a pretty compromised version of Breeze, but they were in his face and around him that whole game. And I'm looking at this like, if I bet either way, how unhappy am I if ... happens, right?
Yep.
And if you're watching this game, you're like, fuck, they can't block the Bucs. Shit, Aaron Jones can't find any space. And then it's like, all right, it's got to be Rodgers and Adams, and it's got to be, somebody else getting open or whatever. It makes me nervous. Here's the flip side.
Yeah.
The Bucs are sloppy.
Oh my gosh. So many.
They're just not efficient at all. They can't help themselves. They are not like a 17 play, 80 drive team. They're like feast or famine, big plays. And they do some of the dumbest shit. Like some of the third downs last week were absolutely idiotic.
And then
third and one touch passes down 40 yards. Like
you get that big run from Ronald Jones, who's playing hurt, and you get it. And then you get the flag because an offensive lineman held, and you're like, then you get the late hits from Jensen and Marpet, and you're like, I like the toughness, I like all that, but like, big fella, don't come barreling into a defender on third down, and so we get a late hit. Like, no need for that. And then Fournette, which everyone looks at the stats and is like, oh, playoff Lenny, he had this great game. He was so clutch. He had moments. He went the wrong way on a handoff from Brady at one point, which could have been a colossal turnover. Like,
right.
And there is a lot of a lot of wiggle room with the efficiency. They don't run like a Patriots Brady team. It's a little different. It doesn't feel like they're ever fully lockstep right there.
And that's been the word on the street with the people that, by proxy, you can find out what Brady thinks about stuff. And I think the thing with him is like he knows how talented they are, but it's not an efficient team like the best Pats teams he's been on. And and it's a frustrating team to be a quarterback of because he just got there. They barely practiced. He's still trying to find a rhythm with all these dudes. And you can feel it. It's a choppy offense.
The X factor, and I'm going to go into story mode a little bit, is just how freaking happy he is right now. And he's on a different plane of happiness. And I know Patriots fans hear this and they might cringe, but like, it's a whole different deal. And I got a cool story this week that I didn't know until now. I guess at the Combine which is February, and it's not legal to start courting free agents until March when free agency starts. But at the Combine, the Buccaneers guys were all sitting together in a room, and it's all the front office, and it's Jason Light, the GM, and it's Spytech, who's their pro scout, and then this guy Mikey Greenberg, who does their salary cap, and they're all sitting there. And they're like, is there a chance we can get Brady? And Arians is in the room, and they're like, look, we're hearing all sorts of stuff. If there's a chance there's Brady, what we have to do is make sure that we surround him with everything he could possibly want and make our pitch when we're ready. And they're looking at the roster, and it's like Evans, Godwin, a young offensive line. And they go through the defense. They're like veterans who've been there with JPP and Sue. They've got all these young players, like no state taxes, warm weather. And they're looking at Arians, and they're like, a coach who's going to let Brady do as he pleases. He's not going to bust his balls. And they kind of were like, and it sounds ridiculous, but they were like, if we build it, he will come. And they called it Operation Shoeless Joe. That was what they called it.
Really?
And they were like, that is what we're going by. And their entire focus was on, let's get the pitch in order. So when there was an ability to talk to him and talk to Don Yee, his agent, and kind of get into it, they laid it out there, and they were kind of like, Alex Guerrero, your guy who might have been persona non grata at points in New England, not only is he welcomed, we're going to treat him like gold, and it's going to be a red carpet. We're going to have the best schools for your kids, whatever you need, everything. It's all here, and it's sunshine, and it's happiness. And he got there, and there was choppy at first, but like if you saw his face after the interview with Aaron Andrews on Fox, like he's got a smile ear to ear. And I know he was always happy when he won in New England, but like it feels like that happiness factor might be emanating around that entire team. And it's kind of like, now it's house money. We're the second game in a row we won on the road. Now we're going up to Lambeau. No one really is picking us. Like that stuff is real with that team.
Last week was turf. This week isn't.
Yeah.
I do feel like they have a bunch of vets who understand the significance of this game in a good way. Has Sue even played in a Super Bowl? I don't think he has.
He was with the Rams when they went a couple years ago.
Oh, that's right. You're right. But he hasn't won.
But the fact he's been there is a cool deal for them,
Yeah. And then just a whole bunch of people on both sides of the ball. You have some young guys who probably are too young and dumb to realize what the moment is, all that stuff. I think
outside of Gronk, Ryan Jensen had started one game in the playoffs for the Ravens. And then AB, of course, was in a playoff game in Fournette. But all summer long, it was only Gronk and that one game from Jensen from the offense besides Brady who had ever played in a playoff game. So they were all just like, all right, like whatever. And now they're thrown into the championship round.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, and we'll get back to this when we actually do $1 million picks. So right now in FanDuel, it's taping this at 2:40 Pacific time. Tampa's +3, but they're +106. If you bet $100 on it and they cover, it's you cover the +106. So the question for me is, as we know from the playoff manifesto, in the playoff manifesto, there's no real rules that apply this week. I think
these matchups are so good.
These matchups are great. Yeah, there's no weird shit going on. This is just 4 good teams. Do I think the underdog has a chance to win? If you're taking the underdog, you have to feel like they have a chance to win. I feel like they have a chance to win. Is this a 3-point game? Could either team win? Yeah. And that's what I keep coming back to is like, I think Tampa has a chance to win and I'm getting 3.
I'm torn because before the season, I said Buccaneers Chiefs was my Super Bowl pick. And you like kind of hold on to that with like a stubbornness of like, if that was my pick, I want to be right. And then we get to you and I doing this. You did the Bills Bucks parlay back in week 16.
Yeah. You talked me into it.
Yeah. And it's like, we're a game away. And then there's this factor, which we haven't even talked about them yet. He is so freaking dialed in right now on the other side of the ball.
Rodgers.
It just might be he and Adams, and it just might be just, why would you ever bet against a guy as dialed in as he is? The gap in talent between what they saw last week in Drew Brees and what they're seeing this week in Aaron Rodgers cannot be underestimated. Rodgers is playing so well. He and LaFleur are so dialed in. And last week, I tried to make this whole thing about Ramsey and Adams, the first time they got Ramsey in man-to-man coverage was on that goal line play. They ran Adams one time in motion. They ran him another time in motion. They got Ramsey caught up. Rodgers didn't even look at him. It was like a no-look pass right from height, touchdown. They speak the same language. They don't have any hiccups. You might be kicking yourself afterwards if you're like, oh, my God, Rodgers, he wasn't going to lose this game at home finally in an NFC championship game with the way he's playing. To pick against him would be ridiculous. He's the best player in the world right now.
A lot of people like the Packers would be the other thing to be afraid of. Like Joe House likes the Packers. That's always a bad sign. Whenever Joe House likes somebody, it's a bad one. But flip side, betting against Rodgers, it's like you're betting against the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. Granted, he's 43.
You're
not
right.
same side, but
right.
It is one of those where either way you go, you're going to be mad at yourself if it's not going the right way. All right, we're going to talk Bills-Chiefs in a second. We'll take a break. All right, Bills-Chiefs. So the line is KC by 3, and now it is getting close to 3 o'clock Pacific time. As soon as Mahomes comes back, I assume this line will go to Chiefs 3.5. Right now, it's still 3.
All right. So
here's the thing with Mahomes. It's not just a concussion.
Well, that's the
we
whole
saw
thing,
the foot thing. Like he wasn't the same. And I was scared betting on them against the Browns where it's like, oh shit, Mahomes is on one leg. This is bad.
That's the whole thing. I'm not a neurologist, whatever it's called. I don't do the concussion stuff, and it's really like dangerous territory to start speculating on what's going on upstairs. From what I gather, I would be more concerned. I think he's going to play if he goes through the protocol, which he is, and we have 48 hours or whatever, and he's going to be cleared, and let's assume he does. He didn't look like himself the entire first half, and he did that weird like crow hop, like walk to the huddle every time. That Mahomes walk where it's like it doesn't look comfortable. And even when he was running out into the tunnel after getting hit like that, I'm like, whoa, slow down. They're saying it's his big toe on his left foot. And even if he's cleared concussion protocol, and even if he's cleared with his foot, like that's going to be a nagging thing all game long. That gives me a little hesitation just going and saying, well, I'm not betting against the Chiefs.
Remember, he had 2 throws where he had a guy wide open on the left, and each one was a Cam Newton line drive off the ground. Yep. And after the second one, Romo said his foot's bothering him. That's a throw he normally makes. Like that's when you can't push off your foot. That's what happens. I don't think his foot's going to be better this week. So you have banged up Mahomes with the screwed up left foot, who's not going to have the same mobility coming off concussion. That makes me nervous. It really does. I don't. And on top of that, going against a Buffalo team that I really like, that I was convinced going into the playoffs had a chance to win the Super Bowl. And the thing with them, didn't look great in round 1. We talked about it. That was a lot of weird stuff going on there. The Colts played great. There was some weird field position shit.
Yep.
And yet they pulled it out. Last week, I thought Allen missed a bunch of throws in the first half. I actually thought the plays they were calling, Dayball must have been like, oh my God, we've called
there.
Yeah, they were there, and he just missed them. He didn't play well. It was windy, but their defense was way better, and it was a respectable, I feel like they were going to win that game regardless. But
they were the better team.
They were the better team.
Yeah.
But their offense wasn't explosive. My question for you, does this team have a kick-ass offensive performance in them in January? Because I feel like it does.
We haven't seen it.
And Cleveland laid the breadcrumbs last week.
They did. Mahomes' point, the foot is one thing. Sammy Watkins hasn't played. They're hoping he's back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not played. They're hoping he's back. And Brashad Breeland, who's their number 1 corner and who would be in charge of likely covering Stephon Diggs, he went out with an injury too last week. So you're coming in with 3 big question marks. As for the Bills, I'm spot on agreeing with you that all November and December, Josh Allen was doing things that were in the same conversation as Rodgers and Mahomes. And absent a few passes that he had to Gabriel Davis along the sideline in that Colts win in that first half at the end where were just insane passes that Davis was converting, we have not seen that Josh Allen performance, and we have not seen the guy that was in the MVP conversation. if he has to be that guy, which I think he will against Kansas City, can Josh Allen have an all-time performance and that offense put up 30, 40 points if they need to? That's the question, especially after last week where Daboll, everyone was crushing him for it. I thought it took courage, and I thought it was the right game plan. They were like, this is how we're going to win the game. We're going to pass the ball. We can't run the ball. That's just not what we're going to do against Baltimore is what helps us most. So 19 of the first 20 plays were passing plays. That's what they are. And guess what? Earlier this season, there was 2 different games where Daboll called 8 straight runs. So it's not like he can't or he doesn't. That's what it took. It's going to be an awesome game. I cannot wait for this game. And yet you're going to need to have an all-time performance from that Bills offense. We haven't seen that the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a little like the Bucs thing. They seem choppy in the same way, although they did have a 96-yard drive in week 1. I guess I'd feel better about it if they had Zach Moss because I feel like he made them more malleable. Singletary, who I like, but he's missing that little edge of that move the chains kind of edge. He's like that one of those shifty whatever, but I wish they had like that pounder, and they just don't have that anymore.
I mean, they played in week 6 also, and that game is a complete outlier to both teams' seasons.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
I would throw it out because I watched it back, and it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire carried the ball 30 times for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. The leading receiver for the Chiefs was Demarcus Robinson. And the Bills Allen went 14 of 28 for 120 yards and, just terrible. And then the Bills, from what they say, and there's been a ton of media about it, after that game, they kind of had that come to Jesus moment. They're like, we just got blown out by the Titans. We just got blown out by the Chiefs. What are we? And minus the Hail Mary, they have not lost a game since. So I would throw that game out the window. I think they're kind of not only a different team, but Allen seems to just be in a totally different place than he was that game.
I guess the question for me is, does this Bills team have greatness in them? Because I felt like leaving the regular season, there were some real signs that this team was potentially special. Even week 17, when they're playing for nothing, it's Miami, and they're just like, fuck it. And they just beat the shit out of Miami anyway.
Put up 56.
Their offense. Yeah, and their offense had some weeks this year where they just completely, like, they demolished Seattle.
Yep.
And
put up 40 points on the Rams.
So I look at the Chiefs. I don't think the Chiefs have a very good defense. And I know we do this dance with them every year. Yeah. And then when it really matters, they can get stops. But Cleveland was that was a deceiving. What did they end up with? 17 points?
17 points, but they were moving the ball, and they had their
fumble out of the end zone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like you can move the ball on them, and it seems like this is in a weird way, the easiest matchup for the Bills offense out of the 3. You have Arrowhead. I get it. It's a later game, so it's going to be cold, but they're used to that. They're playing in Buffalo. But I like this matchup for them the most because I thought Cleveland laid the breadcrumbs last week. You can move the ball. You can have drives. You can complete 3rd and 4s. There's always guys open. What about Njoku, how many fantasy teams has he let down over the last 6 years? He was wide open for 2 30-yarders. He was wide open.
I know.
So, and then the Diggs piece, who's going to cover Diggs on the Chiefs?
Yeah, so Breland is the hope, and then they've got this rookie who I think, outside of Chase Young, he might have been the best defensive rookie, this L'Jarius Sneed, who seems to make a big play, number 38 every game. They're hoping that he can make some plays. Here's the deal with the Chiefs. It all comes down to this. Because I'm on this show for 3 hours every day for 5 days a week, including the offseason, and we talk about the same teams, and it ends up being the same Chiefs conversation. And now there's this narrative that they don't win by enough points. The Bills won 8 different games by 10 points or more. The Chiefs didn't win any by 10 points or more this season. The Chiefs get lucky. They find a way at the end. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like this. They are champions. They never lose these games, and they find a way. And this last week, they needed 3rd and 14. Chad Henne got him 13 yards. And then when everyone figured that they would call him offsides or they would punt or they do whatever, Henne completes the pass. And then it's what they've done all season long to Tampa, to Miami, to LA Chargers, the week 2 against Herbert. They beat you, and then you're left thinking, if I just had a chance to get the ball back, we would have won. But they don't give you that chance. If this game is close, Mahomes always finds a way. What you're betting on with Buffalo is that they can pounce on them early and be up by 10 points and just give it no ability for this Chiefs team to do what the Chiefs always do.
What do we get from Clyde in this game?
I don't know. He hasn't played in many weeks. I think he's going to dress. And I don't think...
I mean, the Chiefs have below average running backs.
I don't know.
It has to be said.
31. Darrell Williams played well last week.
Okay, he's average. He's not above average.
Fine. Yeah.
And then you have Mahomes, who hasn't practiced all week, coming off a concussion, which was a bad one. I mean, he basically got clocked by Ernie Shavers the way he was like staggering around. And then he's got the bum toe too. If Mahomes was healthy, I wouldn't go against the Chiefs. But the fact that he's not and how much we've liked the Bills this whole time, I would feel like a fool if I didn't take the Bills. But you want me to take the Chiefs.
I do.
All right, so make the case.
The case is that it's the champions who have lost one game in 25 weeks with their quarterback, and they're at home, and they've got all the juice. They've got what it takes, and they know that people are taking the Bills, and they're riding on that. And
you think there's a little nobody believes in us here?
And nobody believes in us from a 1 seed that has lost one regular season game in 23 weeks. Something like that. No, but I do feel like this has been the week that everyone's doing flips for the Bills Mafia, and we talk about this week after week. It's easy to be intoxicated by the Bills thing because of how fun it is and that fan base and what they've been through and just how wonderful their quarterback is and all this stuff. And it's like you almost overlook what the Chiefs have done over this time. It's not pretty, and it's not what it used to be, and it might not look – but at the end of the day, they win these games. And Andy hits the right button, and they figure it out. And if they lose, they lose. But, gosh, it took one freak loss from the Raiders, and that's the only time we've seen them lose since last year, like week 7. I don't know. The Chiefs, they find a way, and they're at home. I think that's pretty good, even if Mahomes comes in not 100%. It's tough.
There's one other piece here that we got to talk about. And
let's go.
I'd like to prepare all the Bills fans. I'm going to go there.
History.
Yeah, the history piece. No. It is sitting there. It definitely was sitting there with the Browns last week, right? When the fucking Chad Henne scramble followed by the fumble out of bounds, like the mojo kind of came out of the woodwork, nuts. And the Browns fans like, oh yeah, we're the Browns. Doesn't always happen. We've seen a lot of teams flip the narrative especially in this century. But I do think this still is the Bills. And I still wonder, like, it's been such an easy, nice ride. The fact that there's so much confidence with them as an underdog on the road going against a team that's won 24 of the last 25. That part makes me nervous with the Bills +3.
They have such a great fan base. They have such a fun team. And the word out of that Buffalo building is that, like, it's a selfless, positive young team, and guys like Deion Dawkins, who aren't household names, are like incredible young men. And then you get the Cole Beasley factor, and he's cool as shit. And then you've got Stephon Diggs, and they're really likable. And they're like, you want to see this fan base that has been through so much have this great moment 27 years after they last won an AFC championship game, getting their trip to the Super Bowl. So your heartstrings, and you know that fan base, and you love that fan base. You want to see them. And even the Chiefs fans who I've spoken to are like, if we lose to them, at least it's them. It's not the Patriots or the Steelers. Right. We got our moment last year. I almost feel like both fan bases are just such, positive, groups of people that want to see success for everyone. I just, at the end of the day, I don't think the history of Thurman Thomas and his helmet and Norwood come into play. But there is this
a tiny bit.
There is this feeling that the Chiefs don't forget what the Chiefs are. It's not like they're a 10-6 defending champion. They are a 14-2 defending champion who should be 15-1 if they started their starters in week 17.
I guess two things worry me with the Bills. One is, do they have the type of team that should be able to beat this Chiefs team? Because I do think a component of that would be you got to run the ball and control the clock. I'm not sure they can run the ball.
I don't think that's his game. Yeah, I don't think that's his game. I think
we saw them last week. They were like, we're not going to be able to run the ball. We're just calling pass plays. And so if it's going to be a back and forth, they're throwing the ball a lot. That's great for the Chiefs.
You'd think so, but the Bills defense, Tre'Davious White and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Levi Wallace, they've got a good defense. So they might be able to capitalize. You saw what they did to the Ravens last week. I think last week I knew Ravens, Bills, first team to 20 wins. Neither team made it to 20. This game, I think the team
first team wins to 30.
No, I think it's the team that holds the other team under 35. That's what I think it is. I think it's a crazy.
What about Beasley? Because that's the other thing that worries
He had
me. Because he
zero
was so
catches last
important for
week.
them. Yeah, he was so important during the season, and I think he's playing hurt. They're not talking about it, but it's a little like the Michael Thomas thing.
And he is hurt because even in that wild card round, he had to be physically lifted up every time he caught a ball and brought back to the huddle. But he was out there last week. He's practicing this week. Gabriel Davis didn't practice on Wednesday. I need to check the injury report. That would give me a little bit of concern. But for the most part, the thought is that Beasley's going to go and is going to be that slot receiver.
Well, here's how the Bills win. Josh Allen has a great game. I know that's like the worst analysis of all time, but if he's not at least very good, I don't think they can win.
You've got your basketball pyramid for all time. Let's go the NFL pyramid. Where's Josh Allen in that conversation now? And then where's Josh Allen if he beats Mahomes in this game?
Well, I think the goal for him would be, can these next two games vault him to the Mahomes, Rodgers, Wilson level, where he's discussed on that level? I don't think he's there yet because he's got to win a game like this.
I agree. And he hasn't thrown his team on his back and been that guy. They beat the Colts, but didn't feel like that was the Josh Allen game. And then last week, it was all about Leslie Frazier's defense. Josh Allen needs to be excellent. And if you really believe in Josh Allen and you think all the stuff that he did against the Steelers, which was amazing, and against the Cardinals, which was great in a loss, and against the 49ers, and then, of course, the Patriots and then the Dolphins at the end of the season, if you think that's the version you're getting, then you should bet with the Bills and have no feeling of regret. If you think that he's still another year away from being at that level, well, that's when you take the Chiefs.
Coaching staff's a wash.
Andy was McDermott's mentor for many years in Philadelphia. There might be a little mind, stuff at play there. Daboll's good. Leslie Frazier's really good.
Both two good coach staffs. Special teams seems pretty even, except for the Butker. The fact that for whatever's going on with him, when this dude can make it from 60, but not 32.
Can't make it short. Tyler Bass is a rookie, but he hit something from like 58 earlier this season. I think that's a wash, pretty much.